Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good morning. The subcommittee will come to order. I want to begin by welcoming everyone to our first subcommittee hearing of the second session of the 113th Congress. Like you, I look forward to a productive session working with my friend and ranking member, Mr. Takano, and I want to thank all of you for being here this morning. Today, the subcommittee will conduct an oversight hearing on the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment, or VR&E program at the Department of Veterans Affairs. This program and its VR&E counselors provide a wide array of rehabilitation and employment services through personalized rehab plans to help the most severely wounded and disabled veterans gain employment or reach maximum independent living. I believe the VR&E program should be the crown jewel of benefits provided to veterans through the Veterans Benefit Administration, since this program has the opportunity to provide veterans great services to transition them to independence and employment. While VR&E counselors continue to provide these vital services to our veterans, I believe, and I'm sure our witnesses on the first panel would agree with me, that more must be done to improve the performance and the effectiveness of this program to ensure that veterans are receiving the services they deserve in a timely manner. A recent GAO report crystallized some of these concerns by highlighting VR&E's problems with accurate performance metrics, workload management issues, and consistency of services throughout the nearly 400 VR&E office locations. As I mentioned in our hearing last fall on VR&E's independent living program, I don't fault the VA central office and field staff for many of these issues. I believe that most of these issues stem from the lack of attention and resources that are provided to the VR&E service by senior VA leaders, which has been VA's practice through many administrations, regardless of party. VA's own testimony states that it saw a 14% increase in applications in fiscal year 2013, and as more and more veterans apply for disability benefits, I'm sure that this number will only grow as budgets remain nearly flat. It is because of this growth in workload and issues raised by the GAO report that I recently introduced two pieces of legislation to help modernize the VR&E program. H.R. 4037, the Improving Veterans Access to Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Act of 2014, would streamline processes at VR&E to help counselors tackle their ever-growing caseloads and ensure that the most severely disabled veterans have timely access to the services that they need for maximum rehabilitation. H.R. 4038, the Veterans Benefit Administration Information Technology Improvement Act of 2014, would require the VA to allocate more funding to update VR&E's corporate IT system called C-Winners, C-WINRS, to improve oversight and tracking of taxpayer resources and the outcome of VR&E participants. My concern about VR&E's IT system continue to be validated when I hear stories about VR&E's offices not having internet connectivity for months at a time, or offices who have to rely on old, outdated fax machines and paper more than computers and technology solutions. I look forward to hearing testimony from our witnesses today, and I hope to learn more about VA's plans to update their systems and implement the recommendations of the GAO's report. We all agree that this program has the ability to greatly improve the lives of veterans, but more work still needs to be done so that we fulfill our promise to every eligible veteran. With that, I recognize the ranking member, Mr. Takano, for his opening remarks. And I thank the panel for their testimony. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Mr. Bertoni, in your report, you mentioned that each regional office differs in how they monitor and how they distribute the caseloads to VR&E counselors. What are your suggestions as to how the VA can improve management to ensure that there is consistency and appropriate workload management at all the VR&E locations, which would help ensure better service to veterans?
A couple things, but it's no surprise that the field offices have a lot of discretion to configure their staff and manage their caseload. That cuts across many different lines of work in the regional offices. But in this case, we did see a lot of variation in terms of how they were organizing these modules to process cases. We had specialization versus generalization. There's clearly, indications that there were advantages and disadvantages of each. Mm-hmm. But it was concerning to us that in our analysis we found that those who work with multiple counselors tend to have a lower success rate. You know, if you had 4 counselors, you were 27% less likely to be successful in your rehab. So it just begs additional analysis. We've recommended that VA study some of these workload models, identify the advantages and disadvantages, and come up with some specific guidelines or best practices that they can share with the regions so they can apply those to their own operations to perhaps be more effective. The resource allocation model needs to be looked at. We've got staffing based on performance that can disadvantage lower performing offices. We've got workloads that are fairly substantial in some offices that aren't excluded, that aren't giving proper credit, and that leads to FTE ceilings. And if you don't have the proper FTE ceilings, regardless of the workload mix, you're going to have deterioration in service. So those 2 areas, looking at how they're configured, and factor that into your staffing allocation model to ensure that the appropriate staff are on the ground is important. And we've got 2 recommendations that should get them there.
Okay. And I want to dig into the weeds a little bit on this. Ms. Varela, I'd like to follow up with you because you had a recommendation as to caseload management. I think you said 1 to 125 was your or DAV's recommendation. So, Mr. Bertoni, is there? It seems to me like there's a difference in the degree of resources required for a rehab case versus an education case. Could you tell me, should there be different metrics for those 2 in terms of VA staff to caseload?
VA is the expert here in terms of the work credit and measurement system, and I would say you're correct. If you looked at the work credit measurement system, different workloads receive different credit. I don't know if what they're getting for a voc rehab rehabilitation, developing a rehab plan is sufficient or not. I think it's something that the agency needs to look at to ensure that they're giving equitable or just credit for various workloads.
Mr. Varela, do you have any comments on it? Any thoughts about that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the workload credit, obviously there's an incentive to get a veteran to the completion of the program. Sure. And that is where they're going to give most of the credit. So could be setting, there may be a precedence now that is not allowing VR&E to get the credit that they deserve for everything that they do. There's a lot of client contact that takes place. There's a lot of needs that have to be addressed. Circumstances are continually training. There may have to be some coordination between VHA services and other outside entities. So all of that needs to be built in to determine how effective the program is. And if somebody doesn't complete the program, that may not be the fault of the voc rehab counselor themselves. And they would get dinged for that. You know, that would be a smudge on their record. But that doesn't mean that they didn't work with that veteran for a year, 2 years, or 3 years, and that credit should be recognized.
I'm going to try to get in one more question in my remaining few seconds. This is for all of the panel. Ms. Ainsley, let's start with you. Can you tell us what your thoughts are for the C Winners program? Try to keep it in about 20 seconds and tell me what you think the improvements should be. The IT system that they have.
Thank you. We agree that we need better improvements that will help to track the metrics as people are moving through the system, to know where people are at as they are tracking through, and to be able to highlight some of these points, as was mentioned by DAV, regarding as people step through the process, where are they at, and are there ways to provide credit and to identify problems. So if people are noting that they're at a particular level, you're seeing a high level of problem, what can we do to go back and fix that?
Mr. Varela, regarding C Winners, what are your thoughts about the system?
I know there's recommendations to enhance C Winners, but VA going forward, their major emphasis is VBMS.
Right.
Will C Winners be able to communicate with VBMS, or will it continue to be a standalone platform? They obviously need to make those IT enhancements. Can C Winners be enhanced to the point where it gives us all the data that we're looking for? And I don't have the answer to that question. That's really going to require some examination.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. I'm sorry I went over. Thank you, Mr. Kammerer. I appreciate your testimony, and I guess you've been drinking from a fire hose the last few weeks as you get your arms around this. I know that you agree with me, and I think you indicated this in your testimony, that there's a need to improve the C Winners program or to create some other IT tool to better track the cost of participants. You mentioned in your testimony that the VRNE has built a set of requirements for a new case management system that will expand the functionality of the Veterans Benefits Management System, or the VBMS, as more commonly called, to better support the VR&E program. Based on what you've learned so far, when do you expect that these requirements will be funded? And once they are funded, how long will it take for the final product to be delivered and implemented?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned in my written statement and my oral statement, currently we have completed the development of business requirements for the next generation of a case management system. At the same time, Mr. Chairman, we are improving the functionality of our current CWinner system to include a focus on the back end, the business side of it, and as I mentioned, we're piloting the subsistence allowance module. The budget works in cycles, as you know, previous to the release of the President's budget and the upcoming Oversight Committee hearings. I couldn't give you any specifics on funding specifically, but I look forward to keeping the committee informed on the progress of our new system. We are currently validating the requirements that we developed for the new system with our other business lines within VBA and VA, and we will certainly keep you informed of progress.
Okay, that would be good. The President's budget will be delivered on Monday the 4th, I believe, so I'm hoping you'll follow up with us and let us know what the ranking is of the CWinners program and the VR&E IT resources following the release of that budget. So,
yes,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. The GAO report and the VSOs that were testifying here today have shown that they are concerned about the tracking, the 60-day tracking system that the VA currently has in place to track success following rehabilitation. According to the GAO's report, the VA commented that it found little to be gained from directing limited resources to implementing and executing additional post-placement measures. You know, the ultimate goal, you and I both share this, that the ultimate goal of VR&E is the long-term employment and rehabilitation of our veterans. And so I was going to ask you, why does the VA find it important to not extend that 60-day mark to truly support these veterans over the longer term? We did also do a check a bit ago to make sure the statutes, that these limits weren't built in the statutes or not. So the VA has the flexibility to change this if it elected to do so.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I understand your question. It's an important question. As GAO mentioned in their report on our programs, Mr. Chairman, we're seeing veterans in our programs for an extended period of time. As you know, veterans have the 48-month training period for training and education, as we in many cases train and educate them for future employment. And then we have the 18 months of employment services. And as you mentioned, sir, the 60-day period is to stabilize a particular veteran in employment. And then once that stabilization is complete, then we would, in a dialogue with the veteran, say that employment rehabilitation is complete. The challenge, Mr. Chairman, with that 6-year or extended period of time is I think we're sensitive to further extending the period of time, the formal relationship between the counselor and the veteran. As I mentioned in my oral and written statement, we're looking at a post-outcome case management tool to try to be able to measure beyond that 60-day period. And I look forward to looking at other ways to measure that, as well as, you know, Mr. Chairman, the congressionally directed long-term study is measuring 3 cohorts over a 20-year period. So we look forward to benefiting from that as well.
Okay. Again, I would, you know, again, I realize you're new in the job, but I would, if I were in your shoes, I'd consider trying to extend that a little bit. And it could be something as simple as 120 days out, 180 days out, a phone call to the veteran and say, how are you doing? You still employed? Things like that. So, again, we're not talking about a giant resource sink here. I don't believe. One last question: have the VA's voc rehab counselors participated in the VA all-employee survey? And if so, what were the results of the survey?
I do not know the answer to that question, okay, Mr. Chairman. I would have to take that to the record, for the record, and get back to you.
Okay, that'll be great. I now recognize